Hello and welcome back to Newhouse Esports Update, Episode 6, where I'm back at the desk with Sammy St. Jean. Again, in a different location, as you can see. We are currently bouncing around, but we will soon, in just a couple weeks, figure out something, and we'll make sure that it is consistent, and we have found a permanent home.
It's the second room I've been in as well, so
We'll
lock it down and get a little more comfortable, but this is a new project, a new kind of everything. This hasn't really been done as far as we're concerned, so We'll figure it out. We'll get dialed in, but for now we're kind of powering through, persevering a little bit, against the odds.
Roll with the punches. This is my fourth room, for example.
Well, also, in general, too, the general gist of what you and I have talked about recently in terms of what we're trying to do and what you want to do with this podcast in particular, or show, and whatever this is kind of turning into, is to bring esports to kind of a different stages. It's bigger in other countries. I feel like in Japan and in certain other countries, it gets the platform that maybe we're trying to see it get. Because you had a recent experience where you got to see it in person, even in the U.S., and it is a real sport in really the same sense. So I feel like our figuring this out is kind of coinciding with hopefully getting that message across and hopefully increasing viewership at the same time.
Absolutely. I mean, we know how accessible it is, and we'll get to that event later on in the episode. For now, let's talk about this week in esports. Starting off with the RLCS, or Rocket League Championship Series, North America Fall Cup. So Rocket League is something that I've briefly touched on previously in another episode, but for a little summary and recap, Rocket League is a sports-based rocket-powered car soccer game developed by Psyonix and currently owned by Epic Games. It is a very fun, fast-paced, and easy-to-understand esport that I think a lot of people can really gain traction with.
Well, as a soccer guy, it was pretty easy for me to kind of get into it and get the general gist of. But the pro scene itself is a bit confusing and how to follow it as well.
So the pro scene is sometimes a little bit confusing and difficult to understand, but essentially it follows a multi-month split in terms of the fall, winter, and spring, and then in the summer it has the World Championship event. So starting in October, we had the Fall Open, and we just had the Fall Cup, which then goes on into the Fall Invitational. After the Fall Invitational, it then finally goes to the Major, where the best teams face off in a tournament to determine the Fall Split champion. And this then repeats through January of 2023 with the winter split, May of 2023 for the spring split, and then, of course, finally finishing in August with the World Championship.
So they don't really have an off-season, do they?
No, not really. This maybe about September is their off-season. Yeah. But, of course, in the RLCS Fall Cup, we've recently had the Fall Cup champions being version 1, taking down Gen G Mobile in apparently the longest best-of-7 series in Grand Finals history, which was just a crazy series all around. And Gen G was able to beat the Fall Open champions, FaZe Clan, and they've automatically secured their spot for the Fall Major, skipping the Fall Invitational altogether, with the total amount of points that they've earned. We'll have to see how the Fall Invitational goes afterwards, but make sure to tune in to RLCS, or the Rocket League series on Twitch, to pay attention to the European Fall Cup, as that will also determine who will make it into the European Fall Invitational afterwards.
Well, also, too, since this is so early in the season, there's going to be plenty of opportunity as well for us to cover this and cover maybe the bigger events a little more in depth. So they're still kind of getting their feet wet on this season.
Exactly. And, version 1 and Gen G Mobile, it was a great series. Highly recommend you watch that. And just so you can kind of get a sense of what the good teams are, how good they are, and how to watch them. And particularly once we get into the live events, the crowds are going to be something great, because they bring the chanting, as you're so familiar with like Premier League and soccer events in general, and bring that into the Rocket League arenas, which is just a joy to watch and listen to.
Well, certainly. But I would say in terms of which sport to get into first, we talk a lot about it variety of sports, all of them PC based for the most part. Rocket League play on console.
Exactly.
But this game, I think, is the most accessible in terms of a new esports viewer.
Absolutely.
It's much easier to get into and a lot less to learn. Because at the very basis of not playing it, it's just putting a ball in goal. Like, it's a general concept that everyone, even regardless of what your kind of basis is, if you understand that, you can understand and then find some enjoyment out of watching Rocket League.
Exactly. And so highly recommend you tune into some of those. The games were only 5 minutes long, unless, of course, there is overtime. So doesn't take too long to really get invested.
No, definitely not. And I would say as well, especially in those longer series, it's very easy to get invested in just the best of 7 idea as well. And seeing some of the type of goals that people can score flying off the walls in the way they work.
The flashiest goals and the craziest highlights really come from Rocket.
Get some really good calls too. As Newhouse students, we got to appreciate the broadcasting that goes into this. Some of those are very, very good as well. Yeah.
I can't wait for that. Moving on now to, of course, the League of Legends World Championships. Now the semifinals have been determined. So now the semifinals of the World Championships have been determined. I was almost correct, I gotta say, with my predictions. I got 3 of 4 correct. Now, actually, no. Check that. I got 2 of 4.
I was gonna say it didn't start out too hot with game 1 either.
No, it did not. I predicted Rogue with a 3-1 victory. JDG Intel, they are not playing around. They are very, very good at what they do. They were able to really effectively shut down Rogue in a very quick 3-0 victory. Rogue did try to fight back, but it really just came down to like just small team fights here and there. The really big surprise, though, was the one that I tried to sell as the featured matchup, which was T1 against Royal Never Give Up. Also a 3-0 sweep, where Faker, the legendary mid laner on T1, has been around for years and years, has never gotten worse than a semifinals appearance in his career. So, of course, I didn't bet against T1, but I probably should have expected them to finish them off so quickly.
Well, I was also going to say, too, we spent a lot of time talking about how T1 is a powerhouse in this game, and they have been for a long time.
They have.
The main, continuity, the continuation, the one player that you can always point to that's been a part of that T1 squad has been Faker, and here he is again in the semifinals.
Not only that, but it just really goes to show how good Faker is, because of the 5 youngest players in League of Legends Worlds, 4 of them are Faker's teammates. So he is literally bringing a group of rookies and like 18, 19-year-old guys to the semifinals of the world's biggest stage.
Salute to a veteran of the game for that one right there. He's,
absolutely.
But again, it's very, and you can do this with any sport, but those people that just have this longevity of success. I mean, even I feel like the biggest example people can point to, and you're a Patriots fan, so here it is, Tom Brady.
Right. Absolutely, yeah.
He's a similar, and obviously he's not mid-40s, but he's still someone who's playing far beyond what his counterparts are doing at that level of success that you're seeing.
Right. It's just the ability to stay on the top of your game for so long and lead multiple teams with multiple guys to multiple championships, and that's exactly what Faker is hoping to do with this new squad. Now, the other 2 matches here, Genji and Donwan Kia went, instead of a 3-1 victory, a 3-2 victory, and that was one that I was able to see in person. More on that later. It was an absolutely electric arena. It was a very close fight at the very end, but it wasn't even closer. It wasn't even in comparison to Edward Gaming and DRX, which DRX, with the surprise 3-2 victory, and not only that, the reverse sweep. EDG goes up 2-0 over DRX, and DRX wins 3 straight and takes the spot over the defending champions.
But we'll be able to get into those games in particular, the ones you were in person for a little bit
absolutely.
later as well.
I'll show those. Yeah. After that, let's take it over to the wonderful Sammy St. Jean for a little bit more information about Valorant franchising and the Challenger circuit.
So when we're looking at Valorant, the season, we're in the off season right now. Something Rocket League players don't get. There's an off season, and it's kind of built in here for the early stages of winter into the fall. And you can see behind us here, this is going to be the schedule they're working with going forward. And this is different to what they've done in the past, given that they weren't going off of franchise teams and then unfranchised teams. Mm-hmm. So for the franchise teams, you're going to see under that international label that we have behind us here. And it starts off with this kickoff tournament, and that's going to be all 30 teams. So there's 3 regions that we kind of briefly touched on, 10 teams per region. All 30 teams are in this kickoff tournament, and then they have the international league split. So the winner of the kickoff tournament secures their spots in that June tournament that you see in purple called Masters. Gotcha. And that Masters winner will secure their spot in Champions. So it's kind of this build-up, as you're seeing, and you see it in every esport. It's kind of this gradual build-up through the season, very similar to what we kind of touched on a little bit with Rocket League. It starts at square one, and it's got to build up to that apex of champions in some of these kind of higher quality tournaments. Mm-hmm. But kind of the stakes of that kickoff tournament is to get into Masters and secure that spot. And the other teams that got invited to Masters are these teams in the International League split, the ones who do particularly well in the International League split. So it takes some of the top teams. Don't know exactly how many teams from each region go yet. I don't think they've determined quite how many teams get invited to that specific Masters just yet, but they still have time. Exactly. We're not even into November yet, and they start in February for the kickoff tournament. So still plenty of time to get ahead to a May into June tournament.
That'll be exciting to watch because, you know, as you said, with a whole lot of franchising, but now with this kickoff tournament with 30 different teams, this really gives teams an opportunity to potentially knock off some of the bigger, more, even some of the franchise teams, the bigger, more higher profile teams that have been around for so long, and even see some like underdog stories here and there. And especially, hopefully, as this leads into the what begins in January, this Challenger split, which I believe is new.
Yeah, it is. So I want to finish briefly with internationals and what the last thing I didn't touch on, which is that last chance qualifier in July. So that'll be the teams that didn't win in Masters or haven't secured enough league points with how it's going to work there. What they do is they go back to a similar to the International League split, but it's just going to be a tournament in your league. And essentially what's going to happen there with those last chance qualifiers is either 1 or 2, depending on how it works. Last year it was 1 team per region that made it from the last chance qualifiers. That winner of the last chance qualifier is going to get the master spot for your region as that LCQ champion per region in one of those 3 regions. So that'll be kind of that last chance grab there to get into champions. But we're looking at challengers, and this is for the unfranchised teams. And you saw some big hitters, some heavy hitters that didn't get in there, and one of them being Optic. They lost in the finals of Champions. Yeah. So a lot of their players are gone, so they're not necessarily, I don't think, many people are looking at anymore. But you're going to see teams like FaZe Clan, TSM, and others, particularly in NA, that are going to stand out and have another shot at. I believe, actually, another big one in the EU was FPX or Fun Plus Phoenix. They didn't get in. They were a heavy hitter as well. So teams like that are going to have a shot at what is going to build up to the Ascension Tournament. It's a relegation promotion system, which is going to be very exciting. So essentially, they kind of have this plan, and I believe it's not 100% decided, but they're going to be inviting more and more teams into franchising as it builds up. I believe by 2026, they're going to have like 44 or 46 teams in there. But it's building up by 2 to 4 teams per. Obviously, you want to have an even number. But that's kind of how they're going to build it up, is this gradual progression in size to allow for more franchise teams and more teams to be involved in that chase for champions.
I really like that promotion and relegation system, as we're so familiar with it, especially if you watch soccer or international play, as like you would just hate to see your team like you perform so poorly that you get demoted. And so introducing that into esports is really a way for people to, again, like reach a larger target audience, and so people can really like relate to that, since they maybe watching like soccer or other sports that have that system, so they can easily just kind of understand why that happened.
And there's also more on the line as well, so it's more of an incentive, because a lot of teams too, like say you get in previous matchups, you're in a tournament and you kind of already got your spot into the next tournament, so you're like, okay, why do I need to give away my strategies and show what we like to do, and give away our team comps for nothing? If I'm already got my spot secured in Masters and Champions, there's no reason for me to give away my comp. This time, it gives you this incentive to get points because you could be a bottom of the table team that's done really well, and now you have an opportunity to really kind of cement yourself and give yourself that extra little bit of cushion. They haven't necessarily gone into exactly how the relegation part of that is going to work, or if it's going to be strictly expansion until they hit that kind of goal of 46, and then relegation is going to kind of kick in just to give these other teams a chance, or they're going to keep growing. They haven't really kind of gotten to that, but it is certain that there's going to be a promotion based for those Ascension teams, and that's what the Ascension tournament in July into, I believe, the beginning of August is all about.
Nice. Yeah. Well, it'll really be interesting to see how that unfolds, how it'll really impact future tournaments in Valorant, and even could potentially impact future tournaments in other esports, and really kind of make it something that could even be somewhat of a norm, even with like Call of Duty tournaments, which will definitely be fun to get into once Modern Warfare 2 Remastered comes out very shortly.
Friday,
yes, exactly. Now I want to take you guys to the Hulu Theater at the Madison Square Garden, where I had the wonderful opportunity to attend the semifinals, or the quarterfinals rather, matchup between Gen.G and Damwon Kia that we mentioned earlier. So you guys can take a look at what a esports event looks like in person. Here it is.
Gen.G! We're ready, Andrew. Scenes at MSG there for
Absolutely.
League of Legends. You want to just give us another sentence or two here to kind of summarize what your overall experience was?
So at the end of the day, that experience was absolutely unbelievable. It was really like a once in a lifetime thing, because it's something that, it doesn't come around very often. This is a worldwide event, so the fact that it was able to that it came to not just the United States, but to an area so close to where we are, I was able to go down there and really have like a great experience. The people at Riot Games are fantastic. They were very courteous and really made me feel welcome.
Yeah.
So many thanks to Riot Games and Newhouse for providing this, and highly recommend that you go to a esports event if it is in your area, as they are very exciting.
Yeah, and I'm hoping, especially with Valorant, they only really get into the LAN experience, those on-site experience with those kind of international tournaments. I'm hoping they do it a little bit more so with those a LAN experience for those last chance qualifiers or those regional tournaments, kind of get more into those and have more opportunities for people in America to see that game in particular. Because you watch these games and I feel like that scene is going to be constantly growing, especially considering it's such a new game.
Exactly.
But I know that we have a new little segment we want to introduce, and something that we hope is relatively informative and fun, and something that'll kind of get you to better understand some of the lingo we throw around without a second thought. So I'll kick it to you for that.
All right, so welcome to now the vocab word of the week. This week's vocab is the buff or the nerf. So these are two inverse terms. Let's just take one at a time. So first of all, a buff is whenever, of course, games are not final. when they are published, particularly online competitive games, whatever like coding or changes that may happen to the game, they are not final. So things may need to be tweaked here and there to make sure that the game is as balanced as it can be. Maybe some things need to be adjusted. So that's where buffs and nerfs come in. So a buff is essentially something that would increase the maybe that might be the damage that something deals. Maybe it could be like, oh, maybe a speed might be faster, or a distance might be shorter. Anything that would increase the power or the usability or like the applicability of a certain character or weapon, item, whatever that may be in that game. Of course, this can be across multiple different games. Anything that would increase the power of something is considered a buff.
Yeah, and I'll kind of put a little Valorant twist on that, just to my own understanding of what it does. Is you can see it in a lot of different ways, whether it be to guns in particular by raising or lowering the cost in that buying system that Valorant and games like Counter-Strike Global Offensive have, and you can see it also in terms of even just the weapons themselves, whether the bullet spray is tighter or wider, it's harder to control, or there's more kick on it. They change the recoil pattern, like some more stuff we can't get into. But that's kind of the general gist of you can mess around with weapons, you can mess around with the agents, and also especially this is happening a lot in Valorant when they're introducing new agents. The game is so new maps come out, so new agents are going to fit those new maps better. New agents that come in need to be balanced so they fit into what the game's framework already is. So you're seeing, for example, one very popular and common agent is Jet. One recent thing they did with her abilities is she has this ability to have a dash, and you would get it every time you get 2 kills. Now, what they did with that recently is instead of just getting it every time you have 2 kills, you still get it that frequently, but they changed how it works. So you can't just automatically use it. It's not right away. So you have to press whatever your keybind is for it twice. So you have to press that button to initiate it, and then you have to press it again when you want to use it. So that increases kind of the preparation of I'm going into this situation knowing I'm going to get into it is kind of a get out of jail free card ability. Essentially, it allows you to run in, clear a corner, and dash right back out depending on what key you're pressing, WASD for direction. So this kind of makes it a little more difficult to use. You have to be more precise and decisive about when you're trying to queue it up, because as soon as you press that button, you have a set amount of time, and as soon as that time expires, it's a waste. So
exactly. And I guess that kind of leads me into what a nerf is. Yeah. And a nerf is essentially just the opposite of a buff. The terminology can be summarized as essentially, if something is buff, it is maybe strong or it is bigger. Yes, exactly. And then a nerf may be like,
think of a Nerf gun.
Exactly, it's a Nerf gun. I think it initially came from, I believe, Halo, where there was one gun that the damage was reduced so much that the community said that it felt like a Nerf gun. And so then that kind of that Nerf gun, or just the term Nerf, kind of became synonymous with making things weaker. Yeah. So buffs and nerfs are things that are changed in an update or the patch notes that make things either stronger or weaker.
Yeah, certainly, and it's part of the developing of a game, and you even see it in League of Legends. League of Legends have been out for how long now?
Over a decade.
So in a game like that, they're still introducing new champions, and you're seeing that once a champion is introduced, they can't just leave the rest of the game as is, because a new champion's going to throw that balance all out of whack with who's good, who's not, because they have certain matchups that play favorably to them or unfavorably to them. So when you add those new champion, or in Valorant a new agent, you have to balance everyone else to fit them. And sometimes in a game as big as League of Legends with as many champions as there are, they don't have to touch everybody necessarily. But if one person, for example, is a top laner, they have to kind of look at the rest of the top laners. How does this champion fit in comparison to the rest?
Exactly. Well, that is all for today's Newhouse Esports update. Alongside Sammy St. Jean, I'm Andrew Macbeth. Tune in next week where I will be taught how to play Valorant from the expert over here.
Yeah, especially since we're in the offseason, I want to take this chance to have a little more fun with the Valorant segment, teach you the game a little bit, and have this interactive segment where I'm a visual learner. So me spewing a bunch of nonsense about an esport I haven't watched hypothetically would make no sense. Mm-hmm. So kind of getting this in-person experience, we can start out in the firing range, doing a little practice, how the shooting mechanics work, and get into maybe a little bit of the actual gameplay, so you can kind of get a full taste of what Valorant is.
Can't wait. Well, we'll see you both online and at the desk. See you in episode 7.